go your ways and pour out the vials of the wrath of God. Now, brothers and sisters, these first 5 vials in Revelation and chapter 16 are all about God's judgment on Catholic Europe. They're all about bringing an end to an empire that had existed for over 1,000 years. And God was going to raise up this man of destiny, to bring this empire blood to drink. Or you read of that in verse 6 of Revelation and chapter 16. God's going to raise up this man. Verse 6, for they have shed the blood of saints and prophets, and thou hast given them blood to drink, for they are worthy. Napoleon, the man who would emerge from the French Revolution. And Napoleon, brothers and sisters, was 20 years old when the revolution broke out. So as a teenager, he saw this out-of-control train coming down the tracks. And as a man, he used the French Revolution to catapult him to stardom. Historians tell us that Napoleon was the greatest commander, the greatest military tactician since Alexander the Great. He was a man of destiny. But he had a few problems. And one of the problems that Napoleon had was that he was born there, in Corsica. Now, why is that a problem? Well, a few years before Napoleon was born, the French came and took Corsica. And Napoleon grew up absolutely hating the French. And what's more, Napoleon could hardly speak the French language. He had a thick Corsican accent. And to add to Napoleon's problems, Napoleon was only 5'6". That's about there. So, brothers and sisters, here is a man that hates the French, can hardly speak the French language, 5'6", 10 years after the revolution broke out in 1789, 10 years after that, in 1799, this hater of the French, can't speak the French language, 5'6", Napoleon walks into Paris and says, I am your chief consul, soon to be your emperor. No way would that have happened in the normal scheme of things. The angels were at work and God was in control. And so, brothers and sisters, Napoleon therefore became the heir to the revolution, and he pretty much reorganised France and pretty much conquered Europe. Now, what we'll do, like we did with chapter 11, we'll just go through Revelation 16 as a big picture scale first of all, and then we'll come back and drill down into some of the drama and some of the detail. So when we have a look at this, very much like Revelation 11, that inexorably led us to that second great earthquake, the French Revolution, we have the same thing here, where this chapter, of course, chapter 16, is leading us to the greatest of all the 3 great earthquakes of the apocalypse. There's some little things to look at as we just skip through a broad overview first up, brothers and sisters. So here we are, these first 5 vials, as we come down through verses 1 to 11. And what we see is the first vial was poured out upon the earth. We're going to look at this earth in a moment. What territory are we talking about? And then we have the second vial was poured out upon the sea. Then when we come to the third vial, there's something about the connection between the second vial and the third vial. Because when it says this second vial was poured out upon the sea became as the blood of a dead man. Now, the blood of a dead man is congealed. There's no flow. So something's going to happen in this second vial where there is a cessation of flow. It's going to be no blood, the blood of a dead man, no flowing blood. Now look at the correlation between verse 2 and verse 3, the second vial and the third vial. Now look at this. The second angel, verse 3, poured out his vial upon the sea and it became blood. No flow. Stop the flow of blood. in order that there might be a copious flow of blood in the third vial. And that's very interesting. There's something about the second vial that's going to be active, causing the third, the fourth, and the fifth vial to be very, very active and blood flowing with celerity and with alacrity. So therefore, we have a look at this next vial and we read this. In verse 8, and the fourth angel poured out his vial upon the sun, and power was given unto him, whoever he was, to scorch men with fire. And then we have our next vial, our fifth vial. In verse 10, the fifth angel poured out his bowl upon the throne of the beast. His kingdom was already being filled with darkness. And this would be the culmination of that darkness that had been going around through Catholic Europe. And then to finish off that little chart, then we have, and the sixth angel poured out his bowl upon the great river Euphrates, which is our study, God willing, tomorrow morning. And then our study, our final study together, is the seventh vial, and the seventh angel poured out his bowl into the aerial, into the political arena of Babylon. Now, brothers and sisters, that overview there, very briefly, and you're all very much aware of these vials as they pop up through Revelation 16. But just have a look at this. As we begin our study, I want to just take you to Revelation 15 and verse 1. This is God sounding alarm bells to you and I. And in verse 1 of Revelation and chapter 15, we read these words. And I saw another sign in heaven, great and marvellous, 7 angels having the 7 last smitings. These are the last. God has judged the pagan Roman Empire. God has judged the Latin West through the German barbarians. God has judged the Hellenized East through the Saracens. God has judged the Hellenic East through the Turks. God has judged France and Western Europe in chapter 11. These are the last. God's saying, get your house in order. Get your heart in order. Get your ecclesias in order. These are the last smitings. So we read this chapter with that in mind. So, our first vial, the French Revolution. So we've used Revelation 11 as a springboard into chapter 16. Now I've got there 1789. You'll find a number of writings, Christadelphian writings as well, will say 1792, which is when France became a republic. I have no problems with that. When France became a republic, that's when this malignant ulcer that we're going to talk about really permeated out through Europe. But 1789 began this malignancy, this ulcer in France. So for me, I prefer this vial in its starting point, 1789. And no problems if somebody writes down in the margin 1792. The French Revolution. The second vial was poured out upon the sea, 1793. The British naval blockade. Out come the Brits in 1793. And this was the reign of terror in France. While the reign of terror was going on in France and people were having their heads chopped off and taken out into leaky boats in rivers and oceans, awful. While that was going on, out come the Brits, rule Britannia, rule the waves, the second vial. Then when you come to the third vial, we've got there 1796. Now this is where Napoleon comes into his own. Napoleon's going off and he's going to kick out the Austrians from northern Italy and southern Switzerland. Napoleon is 27 years old, Major General. So off goes Major General Napoleon into the Alpine regions to kick out the Austrians from northern Italy and southern Switzerland. And then we have the fourth vial. In 1805, this would be Napoleon's European wars. He's going up to Austria, to Vienna, and he's going to take out the Holy Roman Empire. Now, he's not 27-year-old Major General here. He's now Emperor Napoleon, and has been just under a year. And then we have our fifth vial, which was poured out upon the throne of the beast. The papacy would not escape in 1808. Now, just finish off our chart, we have our sixth vial poured out upon the great rivers of brothers and sisters. So what? Who cares about a bunch of French history? Who cares about the jaunt, the 30-year jaunt of Napoleon across Europe? Who cares? The angels do. God does. So would. Because as we said in our exhortation, all these stepping stones that the angels have been diligently working through, very soon, you and I are going to be handed the baton to finish the work. And when we're handed that baton, we're going to say, give it to me. I know exactly what I'm going to do with that. I know exactly where to go because I have been watching. That's why we care. Because all of these stepping stones are inexorably leading us, brothers and sisters, to the seventh vial in Revelation 18 and verse 21. Thus with violence shall that great city Babylon be thrown down and shall be found no more at all. Alrighty. This man, Napoleon, a vessel raised up by God. There he is at his coronation, Notre Dame, wearing Caesar's crown in 1804. Oh, he thought he was Caesar. He wanted to be Caesar. He wanted to be Constantine. He wanted to be Alexander the Great. He wanted to be great, great, and greater, did this Napoleon. And you know, brothers and sisters, he was an unwitting instrument of judgment by God. He actually saw himself as an instrument of providence. He referred to himself as being an instrument of providence. This is what he said. I am the instrument of providence. She will use me as long as I accomplish her desires, and then she will break me as a glass. Sorry, Napoleon, you got a little bit wrong there. Not she, he. And when God finished with him at Waterloo in 1815, God broke him as a glass. So, his campaigns, the vessel raised up by God, brought untold suffering to Italy, to Austria, to Prussia, and it would be fitting vengeance for the blood of God's servants and the anti-papal witnesses that we saw in Revelation 11 who had been persecuted mercilessly in previous centuries. So we turn our attention then, brothers and sisters, to this verse now in Revelation 16 and verse 2, the first vial. And we read, and the first angel went and poured out his vial upon the earth, and there fell a noisome and grievous sore upon men which had the mark of the beast, and upon them which worship his image. Now the earth, now we already very briefly looked at this earth in Revelation 11 and verse 4. The God of the earth, the papacy, the Roman earth. So when you have a look at this earth, we're talking about the Holy Roman Empire. Now when you have a look at the Holy Roman Empire, when it first emerged in 800 AD under Charlemagne, one of the horns of the Lamb beast of Revelation 13, the papacy being the other power, two powers in this Holy Roman Empire. That pretty much was the lie of the land with respect to the Holy Roman Empire started under Charlemagne, Charles the Magnificent, Karl they called him. But then when a few hundred years passed, you'll find that the Holy Roman Empire contracted eastward and looked like that in 1250. Add a few more years to that, and you then have in 1530, you can see the Holy Roman Empire is contracted further eastward, and you can see, brothers and sisters, you can see France ruling within their own right. Even though France was ruling in their own right at that time, nevertheless, France was loosely connected to the Holy Roman Empire by a series of marriages, like Louis XVI to Marie Antoinette, the daughter of the Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire. Now that 1530 map there is pretty much the lie of the land when Napoleon went charging across the earth, when the first vial was poured out upon the earth. And we're talking about the earth beast of Revelation and chapter 13. So then we read, and there fell a noisome and grievous sore. Now when you look in the Greek, brothers and sisters, the Greek is the Greek word poneros, and it means hurtful. And when you look at that word noisome, it literally means evil. So therefore, when you look at the RB translation, it says that a foul and painful sore came on all those who had the mark of the beast. This was a malignant ulcer that would begin in France and then spill out throughout the Holy Roman Empire, throughout the earth. Now you can see there, or maybe you can't see there, that boundary there in red is the Holy Roman Empire. And the ulcer, the malignant ulcer in the French Revolution, beginning in France, would then permeate throughout there. With the proclamation of the Republic in 1792, the effects of the French Revolution spread with malignancy throughout Europe. Why did it begin in France? On this body, this malignant ulcer? Because of the cooperation that France had with the papacy in persecuting the witnesses of chapter 11. Well, brothers and sisters, what God did was to put a great big fence, a big boundary around the Holy Roman Empire, the earth. And God said to Napoleon, although Napoleon didn't hear that, God said to Napoleon, there is your paddock. Don't go out. I have a work for you to do. Your work, Napoleon, is in that paddock, in that fence. You tell that to Napoleon. No, I'm going to Egypt. You do not belong in Egypt. And when he went down to Egypt, brothers and sisters, it was a disaster. Oh, we had a few little wins here in Palestine, but it was a disaster. Yes, he brought back the Rosetta Stone, but it was a disaster. Yes, he started to implement the calling back of the Jews, but it was a disaster in the sense that Napoleon, you don't belong in Egypt. All right, I'll go to England and take England. No way! Take England. I've already met British people. There's no way he could have done that. Brothers and sisters, even to think about taking England, he was defeated in his mind. Oh, well, I'll go to Russia. And he went, and he took with him 600,000 men, the Grand Army. And 500,000 of those 600,000 perished in the snow because of the weather. You do not belong in Russia. Every time Napoleon strayed out of the boundaries within which God had determined he should remain to complete God's purpose, every time he strayed out of that boundary, he was defeated. But every time he stayed and had a war within that boundary, Napoleon was always victorious. Until Waterloo. And then God broke him as a glass. What an amazing thing, brothers. Well, the second vial, now you're going to start to see how the second vial was so important to determine and to ensure that the third and the fourth and the fifth were completed. God's going to use the British, isn't this amazing? God is going to use the British to ensure that Napoleon stays in his paddock in vial 3, 4 and 5. You see how this works as we go through this. So here we are. The second vial, and the sea, the second angel poured out his bowl upon the sea, and it became as the blood of a dead man, and every living soul died in the sea. This, of course, was the blockade of Europe by the maritime forces of Britain dominating the oceans. And we're talking the sea here, we're talking the Mediterranean and those seas that surrounded Europe. A great big rope, a great big chain was put around to impel Napoleon to stay in that paddock which God had determined he should stay in. And God was going to use the genius of Horatio Admiral Nelson against Napoleon. And what? Nelson was on the sea, Napoleon was on the land. And Napoleon saw the need, the desperate need to conquer the Brits. We must put all our strength upon the sea, said Napoleon. We must destroy England and the continent will be at our feet. And so what God would do, brothers and sisters, using Admiral Horatio Nelson to defeat numerically superior forces. And by 1805, Trafalgar, Britain completely dominated the seas and did so for the next 50 years. Now, I want to show you this. Look at this chart. See how the second vial played so much an importance in making sure the third, the fourth, and the fifth were fulfilled. Stay in your paddock. And I'm going to use the Brits to make sure you do that. So here's our first vial. First vial was poured out upon the earth, springing out of the French Revolution 1789. Then comes our second vial on the sea. Now we say there that Britain dominated the oceans and then did so for the next 50 years. So let's push that out. Now when you look at the third and the fourth and the fifth vials, here's where they are. The second vial overarches the third to make sure it's going to happen. The second vial overarches the fourth to make sure it's going to happen. The second vial overarches the fifth to make sure it's going to happen. And I want to show you a little example of how this was fulfilled, brothers and sisters. How the second, putting a great big rope around Europe to make sure that this third, fourth and fifth vial was complete. Now I want to use a little example. I'm not going to talk much about wars at all because there's lots of wars when it comes to Napoleon. Just want to give you a little indication of how God was saying, by using the Brits, God was saying to Napoleon, get out of where you are and back to where you belong. This is how, one of the examples. This was the battle at Abu Qir in Egypt. Now, Abu Qir, the Bay of Abu Qir, is... Hang on, let me get your glasses. Just turn the clock off, will you, for a minute while I put my glasses on. Okay, here's Abu Qir there, brothers and sisters. So there was this battle at Abu Qir. Now, what happened? Napoleon says, I've got to take Britain. I can't take the Brits by going across the channel. I'd be blown out of the water. I mean, the Dutch and the Spanish have gone, I'm not going over there. So Napoleon says, I'm going to go to Egypt. And if I go down to Egypt, I can then go up to Palestine, I can then go up to Constantinople, and then I can then go across to India. Napoleon wanted to go across to India for two main reasons. Because Alexander did, and I want to be as good as Alexander. And the second reason was, Napoleon wanted to cut off the supply of trade from India to England, because England was getting an enormous amount of money from their trade with India to support their war. So if I can cut that off by going to India, I'm on my way. And Egypt was the point or base to do it from. So Napoleon says, I'm going down to Egypt. He didn't tell anybody. He comes down to Toulon, south of France, and he sets off in secret, and he's coming down to Egypt. Now Nelson doesn't know where he is. So Nelson's thinking, where is he? I've got to get him. He's around there somewhere. So Napoleon sailed down from Toulon, and he's on his way down to Egypt. 8 days later, Nelson comes into Toulon and Napoleon's gone. So Nelson shoots down there trying to find him. Where's he going? I think he might be going to Egypt. So Nelson's coming down after Napoleon. Now, when they were out in the Mediterranean, some of you know the story, they didn't have radar, they didn't have all this, pick up the phone and get a little Google map out. So there they are on the Mediterranean Sea, and in the night they passed each other. Nelson's ships passed Napoleon's ship, they didn't even know it. Nelson's looking for it, and Napoleon's sailing on down there. He comes down to Egypt into the Bay of Abu Qir, parks all these ships there. Napoleon jumps off with his 40,000 men, and he's going down to Cairo. He's going to kick out the Mamelukes out of Egypt, and then move into Palestine, up to Constantinople, and across to India. Brothers and sisters. He gets there in Alexandria, and he's marching down to Cairo. They had no idea about the heat. They had no idea about the lack of water. And literally hundreds and hundreds of Napoleon's men put guns to their head and committed suicide. And he gets down into Egypt, and then when he gets down there, brothers and sisters, Nelson came across all of Napoleon's ships in the Bay of Abu Qir and blew them to smithereens. And there's Napoleon, he's down in Egypt, and he's stranded with 30,000 men left. He can't get them back to France. He's got no way to take them back. So Napoleon's got to disguise himself and he's got to sneak back into France. Napoleon, you do not belong in Egypt. All the work that he'd previously done, brothers and sisters, had been unravelled in Europe while Napoleon was down there in Egypt. That's how the Brits, blowing his ships, causing Napoleon to have to slink back, God's saying, I'm using the second vial to make sure you get back to where you belong. And back he went to try and tidy up all the things that went wrong in Europe while he was having this little jaunt down in Egypt. Well, we now come to our third vial. And we read, therefore, in verse 4, and the third angel poured out his bowl upon the rivers and fountains of waters, and they became blood. So you can see that bowl there. So Napoleon's going up there. He's going to kick the Austrians out of northern Italy, and God is going to bring severe judgments on that area. You know, brothers and sisters, this is Napoleon's Alpine campaign. So he's going to take northern Italy, and he's going to take the Pope prisoner. There was something particularly peculiar about this vial in this sense. Napoleon comes from Paris. See that little arrow there? He comes down to Toulon, and he's coming up to the area of fountains and rivers of waters. This verse that we read when we started our session this morning, they are given blood to drink, for they are worthy. This area of Piedmont, where the Albigenses and the Waldenses tried to read their Bibles, tried to stay away from the corrupt papal system, this area of fountains and rivers of waters was absolutely a hotbed of persecution by the Roman Catholics. And God did not forget that. And God was going to particularly judge this area because of what the Catholics did to the Waldenses and the Albigenses. So Napoleon is going up to that area. Now, brothers and sisters, he's going to come down to Toulon. Toulon is here. There. Came in long, because it's one of these other big squares. I've said that before, didn't I? So Napoleon comes down to Toulon, and he's got to pick up the Italian army to go up there and kick the Austrians out. So Napoleon gets down to Toulon, and he sees these people down, and he says, "Who are you?" And they said, "We're the Italian army." And Napoleon said, "Where's your horses?" And they said, "We ate them." He said, "Where's your guns?" They said, "We left them in the field of battle." Brothers and sisters, you've never seen such a ragtag forlorn bunch of blokes. These fellas are decrepit. They've eaten their horses. They don't know where their guns are. And he's got to take them up. He's got 3 months. He's got to take them up to get the Austrians out. I'd be saying, I'm going back to Josephine. No way. I'm not staying here. I'm going back home. But he didn't. He stayed there, and with the charisma, with the electricity of his presence, he whipped this decrepit bunch of ragtag, forlorn bunch of Italians. Yeah, that's right. It fits the Italians anyway. This bunch of Italians, and he's got to whip them into gear, and in 3 months, get them up into and kick the Austrians out of northern Italy. He was amazing when it came to bringing order out of chaos. And so, brothers and sisters, up he went with the Italian army, now whipped into gear, and there was a battle there. And then there was another battle there. And all through this area, there was battle after battle after battle. They were given blood to drink. Finally fulfilling those words, and the third angel poured out his vial upon the rivers and fountains of waters, and they became blood. Well, brothers and sisters, I'm going to deal with the Pope. So after defeating the Austrians, Napoleon turned on the papacy. The Pope heard he was coming, tried to get an army together. No one could withstand the Grand Army of France. And therefore, Napoleon defeated the Pope, he advanced on Rome, and the Pope sued for peace. He was given blood to drink. Well, Napoleon is finished his Alpine campaign. Now he's coming back. He's on his way back to Paris. And when he comes back to Paris, brothers and sisters, everyone loves him. His men would die for him. Napoleon is the man of the moment. And he's coming back to a corrupt, shaky, unstable government in Paris. And as Napoleon comes back, brothers and sisters, the government in Paris don't want him there. They want him out on a project. He's too dangerous. Napoleon has been out there negotiating with the King of Naples. Napoleon has been out there negotiating with the Pope. Napoleon has been out there coding law. Napoleon has been out there carving up land. He's not a military genius. He's a politician. No, he's a government on the move. And they don't want him in Paris. We need to give him a project. Go down to Egypt. Yes, I will. And so therefore, after that third vial, brothers and sisters, Napoleon goes down into Egypt. And when he was down there, which we looked at in a moment ago, in his absence, all the work that he did in that third vial by kicking out the Austrians, while he was down in Egypt, all that work was unravelled, and he had to come back, as we said a moment ago, slink back from Egypt. And in the coup of 1799, Napoleon becomes the first consul, soon to be the Emperor of France. Well, this is the end. Not of our study. This is the end of Napoleon. This is the beginning of the end, brothers and sisters. There he is, Notre Dame, crowning himself as emperor in 1804. Napoleon knew that 1,000 years before, Charlemagne went to Rome and was crowned. And Napoleon said, I'm not going to Rome. The Pope is coming here to Notre Dame. And when you have a look at that tapestry, that famous tapestry, you can see there, Christy and I stood there on those little steps there, and we looked up and we looked around and to see where Napoleon's mother would and should have been. Can you see that lady up there that looks like the mother of Napoleon? She's up there kind of like on the left. See her sitting up there like that? Like that? You see her sitting up there? Can you see his mum? Well, she wasn't there. She said, no, I'm not going. I don't like Josephine. No, I'm not coming. So the painter came to Napoleon and said, look, this painting, but your mother wasn't there. What do I do? Napoleon said, paint her in. And the painter said, well, what will she say? She will thank me later. Paint her in. Now you see the Pope there. The Pope's got his little hand up there doing something. No, he wasn't doing that. Napoleon said, you sit there, I've invited you. You sit there, hands down there, do nothing, say nothing, but just be there. So when the painter's painting away, Napoleon said, oh, you better make him look like he's doing something. Put his hand out, make out he's looking like he's doing the sign of the cross, because I did invite him over. Brothers and sisters, that man did what he liked. He called the shots. He might have only been 5'6", but he had the ego of an 8-foot giant. He did what he wanted. And God had used that egomaniac to do that. Well, brothers and sisters, we now bring our study almost to a conclusion. That clock is looking good to me. Looking at the fourth vial. How are you doing out there, by the way? Let me have a look at you. You all good? Yeah. Good. Oh, I'm exhausted. History is tough. I mean, tomorrow, there's lots of exhortation. This is the scholar history lesson this morning. But they were all pretty good. Look like you can go the distance. There's a coffee waiting for you at the end. I'd love to chat with you more, but I'm running out of time. So let's move. Okay, brothers and sisters. Now, the eighth verse. The eighth verse. This is amazing. That's why I wanted you fresh. I wanted you to have a little wiggle and a little laugh. All right, verse 8. And the fourth angel poured out his bowl upon the sun, and power was given to him to scorch men with fire. This would be Napoleon's campaigns against the Holy Roman Empire. Yes, but it would be his Austrian campaign. Napoleon's going to enter Vienna, and Austria is going to be defeated. Now, brothers and sisters, the sun. This is amazing. And I hope you've got a mindset that you can actually see this connection here. The sun. Of course, it's a symbol of political power. You have Revelation 8 and verse 12, where the political power of the Western Catholic Empire was eclipsed. You have Revelation 12 and verse 1, which you know oh so well, where a woman was clothed with the sun, given political power as the Catholic Church. The sun of Europe had been the Holy Roman Empire since 800 AD. But look at this, brothers and sisters. What's the sun got to do with Revelation 12 and verse 1, where a woman was clothed with the sun? What's this all got to do with Charlemagne, the Holy Roman Empire, being taken out, but having existed for over 1,000 years. I think this is amazing. Look at this. That's the cathedral built by Charlemagne, the empire that Napoleon is going to take out. So a Frenchman, a Frank, brought in the Holy Roman Empire. A Frenchman, albeit he was born in Corsica, but he waved the French flag when he was an emperor. A Frenchman takes it out. So a Frenchman brings in the Holy Roman Empire, and a Frenchman takes it out. So it's all about the taking out of the Holy Roman Empire. Charlemagne brings it in. Napoleon's going to take it away. Compare the two of them and bring in this idea of a sun and a woman clothed with a sun. Look at this. There's Arkham there. I'd love to go to Arkham. Has anyone been to Arkham? Oh, done you. History buffs. Did you go to this cathedral? Did you not? You did. You can't remember. Well, Starbucks on the other side of the road. Okay. Now, brothers and sisters, here's this cathedral that Charlemagne built. You go inside that cathedral. Notwithstanding the wonder of those stained glass windows, there is a woman clothed with the sun, crowned with 12 stars, and the moon under her. Who put that there? Charlemagne did. Where did he get that from? Revelation 12. Catholicism. It's all about bringing in the Holy Roman Empire and somebody coming, taking it away from them. And do you know, under that golden woman, clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, under that woman, that sun, no less than 32 emperors of the Holy Roman Empire were crowned. And therefore, from AD 1438 through to 1806, the rulers of the Holy Roman Empire almost invariably came from Austria. Therefore, the ruler of Austria was regarded as the ruler of the Holy Roman Empire that Constantine is coming to take out. What an amazing thing. What an amazing thing. Well, brothers and sisters, he's going to the sun. He's going to take out what Charlemagne brought in. Charlemagne put that woman clothed with the sun, all about Catholicism. He's going to remove it. But then you read about Napoleon, power was given to him to scorch men with fire. Do you know, if you were to read, you may have done this, if you were to read, I wasn't around, I'm not that old, but if you were to read the British tabloids in the times of Napoleon, fire. Everything in the British tabloids at this time, the man of fire. The cannons that he used, he was surrounded by rings of fire, and that's how they portrayed him in the headlines in the English tabloids of the day. But you read this story of Napoleon by Henrietta Marsh when he was down in Egypt. Many of the Mamluks threw themselves. This was the Battle of the Nile. 2 hours. Actually, the battle took place in a vegetable patch. So lettuces and carrots and peas. But you couldn't write that in history. It's not very romantic, is it? Napoleon beat the Mamluks in the battle of the vegetable patch. But they had pyramids in the distance. And so they thought, this is better. We'll call it the Battle of the Pyramids. Very romantic. So here we are. Many of the Mamluks threw themselves into the Nile in panic of flight. Many were cut down by the pursuing French. Those who escaped carried to all parts of Egypt the fame and terror of Sultan Khalid, the king of fire. Well, all the Bible does is coming to take the sun out, and he's a man who's going to scorch people with fire. What an amazing thing, brothers and sisters. Well, the papacy would not escape. The fifth angel poured out his bowl upon the throne of the beast. All the way through vial 1, vial 2, vial 3, vial 4, the papal world is becoming dark, dark, dark and dark, until finally black. But he came back again. But when Christ comes, a greater than that Napoleon, when Christ comes back, the papacy will be totally and utterly eradicated. So, brothers and sisters, now Napoleon is going to take Rome and the papal states. And you see that bowl being poured out upon the throne of the beast. And in summary, we simply say this. The papal throne in the fifth vial had been abolished. Napoleon's work was done, and his further campaigns simply added to the absolute misery already experienced by the worshippers of the beast and his image. And so God was now going to break Napoleon as a glass. He had used him as an instrument of providence. So Napoleon was defeated at Waterloo on the 18th of June, 1815. And many of you would know, being British, he was then exiled to the remote Atlantic island of St. Helena. This man raised up to bring an end to an empire that had existed for 1,000 years. There he was, dying in 1821, and he was 52. And John Thomas was 16. No wonder, as a teenager, Brother Thomas, before he came to the truth, no wonder as a teenager watching these events, like we're watching Israel and Russia today, and the Ukraine, and in the Gaza Strip. We're watching all this, brothers and sisters, and here was John Thomas, a teenager, watching all these things that were going on. No wonder when Brother Thomas picked up his pen, it flashed with fire, it flashed with the enthusiasm, with the zeal of one who had seen God and the angels at work in Europe. We have got so much to be thankful for, brothers and sisters, that we have men raised up like that. What Nelson was on the sea, what Napoleon was on the land, Brother Thomas was as far as Bible prophecy is concerned. And so we conclude. If the French Revolution had not happened, Revelation 11, if the wars in Europe did not take place, Revelation 16, if the church and state had not been separated, we may very well not be here with our Bibles open. So as awful as the French Revolution was, as awful as those wars were in Europe, they were needed. The church and state should be separated, that the truth be revived, that you and I can sit here unmolested and read about and thrill about God's word and God's coming kingdom. So tomorrow, brothers and sisters, we take a much more exhortational approach tomorrow as we then move into our generation. And we pick up the last few sections of Revelation 16 and we look at our heading and our subject title, A Way Prepared. Our topic, God willing, for tomorrow.